Hey folks, welcome back, or welcome to Footy with Friends. This week, I have some bonus content for you. Over the past 2 weeks, most club soccer around the world has been on a hiatus for international break. And, well, the Footy with Friends pod has been doing the same. There have been some new blog posts published on the Footy Friends blog recently, and there's plenty more to come on that front. So, if you want the most up-to-date footy content, visit footyfriendsteam.com. Our familiar guest this week is Coach Mike Tringali. Regular listeners may recall that Mike and I both coach at the University of Rochester, and a lot of our downtime in the office is filled with conversations just like this one, where we talk about Juventus in the Serie A, Liverpool in the Premier League, and always the up-and-coming American soccer players. So, please join us for this week's Extra Time episode with Mike Tringali. Well, let's dive into some Juve, huh? Let's break it down. Give me the inside scoop on the old lady, Juventus. So what's happening so far this year?
So in Serie A, there's been a lot of different talking points, but the one that's probably been most specifically pointed to is Antonio Conte's Inter against Andrea Pirlo's Juve, and not just because in Conte's renaissance of Juve back in 2011. His pivotal signing was Andrea Pirlo on a free transfer. Talk about Renaissance, man. I think in the last 10 years or so, he's been the pinnacle of that. But also the fact that Antonio Conte made over 350 appearances for Juventus as a player, captained them to a Champions League, and won the title with them as a player and a manager. It's almost like if Ryan Giggs or Paul Scholes, went and managed Liverpool and then they were competing for the Premier League. I know it's a massive, massive, improbable thing to think of, but that's the way the people in Italy and especially Juventus fans are handling this situation. One of their own, taking, probably their most hated rival and leading them to, the top of Serie A. So it would definitely be a deep, deep cut in the hearts of fans if Conte were to, win with Inter, given his history with the club.
Yeah. So they're sitting in first. Milan, AC Milan. I know we've talked about. Get out of here. They're not going to sustain that. So they're in second right now.
Yeah.
So do you think it's going to come down to the end between Juve and Inter?
I think these next 3 or 4 weeks will be a massive, massive sign of what's to come, because fortunate for Inter in a way, they finished bottom of their Champions League group a few months back. That big talked about group with Mönchengladbach, Inter, Real Madrid, Shakhtar. So I think their early exit from Europe will ultimately help their title push. Juventus still, hanging on strong in the second leg of the last 16 against Porto. So, matches coming thick and fast, and, similar to kind of what we saw from Liverpool, man, a few weeks back, you're looking around the bench, you're looking in the reserves, and you're thinking, can you string a match day squad together?
Yes.
So yeah, it's been apparent for sure. I think the whole ongoing discussion of, is this team 10 players and Cristiano Ronaldo is constantly talked about, because he goes from games where, all you want to do is get the ball to him in the penalty area, and then ones where in the build or in the flow of the game doesn't look like he quite fits. He kind of just does what he wants to. So, another talking point for sure. But at this point, we're taking the little victories, and all I can say is, to get Weston McKennie for 18.5 million euros is,
Yeah.
one of the bargains of the century. I feel like I'm absolutely delighted as a fan and as an American.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about Americans playing at the highest level, being one of our best exports. We're starting to make the transition to the field players now. And McKinney's a
Yeah.
perfect example of that. I mean, uh, I don't know. He's a grinder, right? He just comes in, does his work. It's just 100 miles an hour the whole time.
Mm,
And
yeah.
he's playing well enough to impress the manager Pirlo, play alongside Ronaldo. It's it's fascinating to watch. And yeah, holy cow, what a bargain.
Yeah. Yeah. Not sure if, Schalke's scratching their head. I know, kind of since, 2010 when some of the new front office of the club came in for Juve, bargains have kind of been their specialty. So this just goes on a long, long list of exceptional deals. And it's just great to see, yeah, like, an American playing at a prominent club, that is not only looking to him in big games, but also willing to make the investment of him to be a crucial player for years to come. That's so exciting, and it's interesting. Now we've kind of hit this turning point of maybe it's more the field player export now, and in some of these positions we've looked at. Right? I mean, it's so. I mean, how many guys do we rattle off in the office from time to time or out in the field? That's like, oh my God, forgot about him. We got a full 11 right there and some subs.
We do. We probably have a full 11 playing in the big five leagues of Europe. So now,
Mhm.
can we come together and beat Trinidad and Tobago? That's the question.
Well, after the news that came out today with the Jamaican Federation making a lot of late pushes for players, in the championship and in the Premier League on some of these other clubs, I think we're going to have to probably have our eyes peeled as well for the USA Jamaica games that come in the future.
The Reggae Boys, yeah, they're pretty good.
So, no, it's awesome to see as a fan, and it's also great to see. I mean, of course, we know Andre Pirlo as a player, midfield maestro, controlled the tempo of a game, not really known for putting in the hard yards or his fierce tackles, and more finesse and more orchestra based. So it's great that he has just this profound trust for a player that's known for doing the dirty work and popping up at the right moments, and being the master of putting out fires and starting attacks.
Yes.
So it's great they kind of have that good relationship now, and they're two totally incomparable players.
Yeah, they're incomparable, but it kind of sums up maybe what Juve is, and like they're a good bridge between two different generations of Juve of soccer, where you have the old guard, you got Bonucci in the back, Chiellini, Buffon, and then your creative, hardworking midfielders mixed in with some creativity, some flair. So it's really cool to see the blend that comes together on any given match day. And even cooler that, like you said, they're the executive level of Juve. Like there's familiar faces there too. Where like they always zoom it like to Nedved sitting in the stands. Like how cool is that to have former players given back to the club? Like so your identity really is maintained throughout the years.
Yeah, and that's such a good point you bring up, Brady, because you have a guy like Pavel Nedved, who was one of the most expensive transfers to date when he made that big money move from Lazio, and the role he's had now has been instrumental to their success throughout Italy and being protagonists again in Europe. But even the owner, Andrea Agnelli, he inherited the club from his father and his father before him. So it's really, the club has been a big mainstay of the Agnelli family, who actually owns the Fiat Chrysler Group,
Right.
which is like one of the major exports of not just the Northern Italy Piedmont region, but also the entire country. So to have a club embedded in a family like that understands, the importance of family and being close to others, on such a massive scale. I mean, we're talking about, a massive club, not
Right.
just within Italy, but in the world. Is so cool to see. So that's something, as a fan, that it always makes you feel like the club can be closer to you than just something that's, collecting stock dividends and looking after its sponsorships. It's much more than that. So always something that's cool to see. And great that that's something that's being fostered down the road. And I hope, Andrea Agnelli, way, past our days, gives it to his son, and it continues on to be this, incredible family tradition.
Yeah. Hey, maybe he can give it to his daughter too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard not to root for a team with those like deep connections and rich history. So, hey, I'll be keeping my tabs on Juve, especially in, like you said, in that second round tie versus Porto. You got a clutch away goal, which will serve them well, but still down 2-1 heading into this next match.
Yeah. Um, definitely made some regrettable errors in that game, specifically at the goalkeeping position. I mean, sometimes, teams try to play out to a fault. I think they were no stranger to that in that first tie. And,
Yes.
Porto's a team that can be lethal on the counter. And, they like to get numbers forward out of that low block as quickly as possible. Kind of, did an Italian job against the Italians.
They did.
Never feels good when it's coming back against you, but hopefully, being at home and in that second leg with that crucial away goal, hopefully they can go on and get on to the next round. I know that the Champions League has been something that's constantly talked about in the Italian media, because Juve's kind of been flying that flag consistently, being in the competition the last 9 or 10 seasons. So hopefully it's a point now where they can really just focus on getting to the latter stages. And I know, even we talk about this with Liverpool and some of the other clubs in European competition, you sometimes need a little bit of luck when it comes to getting to those later stages of the tournament, for sure.
You do for sure. Depends who you get drawn against, who's healthy when you eventually play each other, and that's all thrown up in the air this year with COVID. But is Champions League the priority? Is that the holy grail? It was kind of the opposite for Liverpool, where we've won the Champions League now 6 times, but it's been 30 years before we've won the Premier League. But it seems like that might be, the converse of what's going on.
That's such a great question, and I think back to the Man United Liverpool rivalry that's decades and decades in the making. Liverpool, like you said, has always been that the protagonist in Europe, whereas United's been in large parts dominant domestically.
Right.
So to kind of take that similar rivalry and that similar history over to Italy, Milan is the team of historically that's been dominant in Europe. They've won the competition 5 times. They've had some storied teams that have been dominant, and Juventus has always been the team that has probably been much more of a force domestically. So I think what you're seeing is kind of, Juve looking to take a shift. And of course, they definitely had their fair share of opportunities, especially with Milan kind of taking a dive out of European competition for a number of years.
Yeah.
We'll see how things go. That's probably a conversation for another day. But yeah, that's probably the comparable rivalry in Italy, and especially with that relationship of one team being more the front runner in the domestic league, and one being more the front runner in UEFA Cup competitions.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you need a different type of team to do well in Europe versus doing well domestically. And the teams that do well in both have just a loaded team. Your Man Cities, your Bayerns, your Real Madrids. So it's interesting to see how they're growing their squad, getting guys like McKennie to change the style a little bit. But it's really exciting watching them just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the last team that Milan might have taken to a Champions League final, it might have been against Liverpool. I think we talked about, the big, the big night in Istanbul, but there was even, I think, Athens a few years after that where I think, and that was the last time they went to a cup final, Milan.
Yeah, it was 2 years later in Athens. Inzaghi got a goal.
Yeah.
Who else? He might have gotten 2 goals, but yeah, it was kind of revenge for 2 years prior. But both of those Milan teams were stacked.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the Hernan Crespos, the Andrei Shevchenkos. I mean, prolific forwards, right? We need some of these guys back in the game.
Yeah, yeah. But hey, Carragher shut him down. Jersey Dudek denied Shevchenko big time.
Jersey Dudek. There, you talk about prominent reserve keepers over their lifetimes. He is a legend.
Spaghetti legs. We still love him.
Oh my goodness, spaghetti legs.
An all timer.
Yeah, I mean, who is as far as things go with Liverpool, especially with like you've gotten back to the glory days of the Champions League and the league title. What sets like the groundwork now for like the sustainable success of like the Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley days? Does it have things to do with Klopp, or is it more like you said, or we talked about with Juve, like something to do with the front office and the CEOs and the director roles? If you had to say something.
Well, I think most of it's coming from Klopp, and like I'm sure most of it came from Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley. They're kind of the focal point, the voice of the club in a lot of media outlets, but they can only do so much. So they need the backing of a really supportive ownership, which we have for the most part. Been a little more conservative over the past couple years, but yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the coaching, his message that he's putting out, and like the type of players he's recruiting, and just refining the players that are already coming through the team. So there's like a really cohesive vision, which I think all teams with sustained success have. There's just a really well-defined culture where, we know who we want to buy if we're going to make a purchase. We also know who we're not going to buy. We're not even going to touch, like Neymar wouldn't fit in at Liverpool, right? Erling Haaland would fit in at Liverpool. It's two very different types of forwards. Not that like maybe we don't get either of them. Like maybe we don't want either of them, but there's certainly a specific style and guys that fit in well to the team, and it's usually guys that they think of more than just themselves. They really sacrifice themselves for the team, and that's kind of, I mean, Klopp is modeling that. He's the guy that puts in the work and encourages others, and just his interpersonal relationships go a long way, as did Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley.
I think that's one of the things like I enjoy most about like the stuff you talk about with Liverpool, and just like following along the club from time to time with you, especially like the transfer strategy. They take a large step away from like the marquee signing, the obvious transfer target, the one that's probably been scoring bucket loads of goals, or he's always in the papers, and it's always the other guy that probably has more of a selfless image and more of an industrious nature about him. And that was so evident in like the signings of like, Sadio Mane, and even Mo Salah, who, people kind of wrote off for a while after his Chelsea days. And even, I mean, I know, Roberto Firmino was a Brendan Rodgers signing, but I mean, surely enough, coming from Hoffenheim, no one could have expected the output he's had, throughout his Liverpool career to date. I mean, these are wonderful, wonderful acquisitions. I think will just go down in history. and it's testament to a great transfer policy.
Yeah, and they know what they want. They want a like specific age, even like you talked about the the prime age of a goalkeeper might be a bit later, but the prime age of at least what Liverpool and Klopp are looking for are 24, 25, where they still have room for growth. And you see all these guys, they get better when they're working within the team and within the club. Like, so that's really cool. That's fun to see. It's fun. It's hard to watch this year, but hey.
Hey, there's always tough moments throughout the history of big clubs, and within their seasons, they're probably just heightened more because you've gone from the hunter to being the hunted. So you gotta, definitely relish the title now, and I'm sure things will improve and good experience. Hopefully there's never a tough period again like this one, but a good reference point for when they do get out of it, for experience to fall back on. So
yeah, it's only gonna, if over a period of time, if you can reflect on any adversity and learn from it, we're gonna be so much better next year. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. Like some folks are like, okay, now we've reverted to Brendan Rodgers or Roy Hodgson's Liverpool. Like, no, not even close. There's a bit of adversity and crazy injuries, but it just means more minutes for some younger players. Like I always rep Curtis Jones. He is thriving. This year he's thriving because of all the chaos. It's like, so it's a net positive for him.
Yeah, the magnitude of the criticism that comes out of some of these places is so emotional and just for a lack of a term, ridiculous. A lot of it's just unfounded, and I think what some people aren't really giving credit as well to these clubs that are making this jump, that are competing with what's traditionally known as like the big six.
Yeah. True.
So I think there has to be credit given where credit's due. I mean, some of these days, teams cannot play, but like some of these other smaller clubs, like we talked about the Leicesters and the West Hams, and even Wolves for spells of last year. I mean, I think there has to be an acceptance and an understanding that this is becoming more than a 4 or 6, 7 team league. I mean, that's just where it's going.
Yeah. There's way more parity in leagues like the Premier League. And there's so much money floating around that everyone's getting their share of the pie, and you see what they're doing with it. So
yeah, brilliant.